Hello, I'm going to talk about vibrational astrology. Vibrational astrology is a new term that I'm using for a system of harmonic astrology that's been developed in recent years. And specifically, I'm going to talk about what can happen when the 7th and 11th harmonics are not handled very well. And my view is that anything in astrology can be handled well or not well. Jupiter, the great benefic, is not always benefic. It can cause you to spend too much money, lack focus, lack concentration, etc. Saturn, which is supposed to be malefic, can give that focus that's needed. So, anything can be good or bad depending on how it's handled, and certainly some things are easier than others. But we're going to look at the negative consequences that are possible from the 7th and 11th harmonics. Not because these harmonics are particularly prone to be negative, they are not, but like anything they can be. So we're going to look at a very negative situation. A fellow, Roger Elliott, I'm making this video in June 2014, and a few weeks ago, he murdered 6 people. He went out on this rampage, just shooting up people, killed himself. He wounded 13 people, killed 6 people, and then killed himself as well. So can astrology help us understand what drives a person to be so destructive and evil? I think it can. Now, what do we know about Roger Elliott? Well, one thing is he left information. He wrote this very long document, which indicated he was extremely frustrated sexually, to put it mildly. He was in his early 20s, still a virgin, had not kissed a girl, was going crazy, began to hate women, and was just crazy at this point, and became extremely evil and destructive, and ended up going on this murdering spree. Now, we don't know what time he was born. It was reported that he was born in the morning. I think he said he was born in the morning of his birth date. He was born in London, but he grew up in California, moved to California when he was quite young. And I did a chart for 9 a.m., which indicates the potential for the exact behavior he would have given the frustration he had in developing relationships with women. And I put his time at within 2 hours, possibly 4 hours of 9 a.m., probably within 2 hours of 9 a.m. when we see this very strong pattern. Now, excuse me, sorry about that. So whether these astrological factors that I describe actually are responsible or are the motivating forces behind his behavior or not will always be debatable. But I'm going to show you a much more evidence-based approach than is usually done in astrology to demonstrate that the likelihood that these are astrological indicators of his behavior. Now, this is not the only thing that drove him to be so destructive and evil, but I think it's one factor. All right. The 7th harmonic, the interpretation I'm going to use for 7th harmonic is that it's introverted, quiet, it's still, focused, disciplined, inclined to interest in inner, meditative, abstract, symbolic, and ancient topics. What happens in the 7th harmonic is your energy system slows down, introverts, becomes quiet, disciplined, and focused. So it's very meditative. It's inclined to disconnect with the outer world and be rather abstract. Sometimes symbolic thinking and ancient topics become major sources of interest. Excuse me. And the 11th harmonic, very different. It's restless, moving, seeking fulfillment, quote, hungry. It's always hungry for something. It's progressive. Oftentimes, people with strong 11th harmonic patterns travel a lot, or they're action-oriented. They're dissatisfied with the status quo and inclined to be impatient. They like to be on the move. Now, so let's look at his chart. Here's the chart done for 9 a.m. He was born in London, England, and we see the Venus-Mars conjunction with a little over half a degree orb, so it's quite strong. And this could, astrologers often say, be inclined to be intensely romantic, and given his romantic frustrations, could help explain his behavior. However, I don't think we know of anybody who's gone on killing sprees over sexual frustration, although Adolf Hitler had a Venus-Mars conjunction and was a murderer, but still, why would this be particularly so strong for Roger Elliott? Well, we're going to see some different things in his chart using vibrational astrology. Now, two rules I use in vibrational astrology. One is a direct midpoint structure. This means a planet directly in between two planets, either conjunct the midpoint of the two other planets or opposition. So one planet conjunct or opposition the midpoint of two other planets, considered to be extremely powerful in vibrational astrology because there's a resonance. Two angles are exactly the same. Another thing that's important in vibrational astrology is the multiplying of a harmonic. So, for example, harmonics 5 and 25. 5, in other words, 5 times 5, very creative, very playful. Harmonics 7 and 49, 49 of course is 7 times 7, have this very strong introverted, controlled, disciplined tendency. Excuse me. The higher harmonic is more internal and more mental form of the same vibration. Okay, and if the theme continues through these harmonics, like you see the same theme carrying through the 5th and 25th harmonic, it really creates a very powerful energy force, because you get that concentration of energy into the higher levels of the same vibration. boy, sorry. Now, what I would expect in the chart of Roger Elliott is some kind of Venus, Uranus, Pluto type of energy. It shows up in the 11th and 121st harmonics, and what I'm suggesting is that this indicated his very high excitability, and being frustrated in this very high excitability drove him crazy. Now, excuse me. Let's look at his 11th and 121st harmonic charts. In the 11th, well, first, let me look at Venus, Uranus, and Pluto in the natal chart. Back to his natal chart. Here's Venus at 6 Virgo, Uranus at 11 Capricorn, so you could consider that to be a weak trine with 5-degree orb. And where is Pluto? Over here at 17 Scorpio. Nothing very exciting going on using our normal astrology. In the 11th harmonic chart, he has Pluto at 13 degrees Pisces, Uranus at 1 Scorpio, Venus at 7 Capricorn. Still nothing very obvious going on. Excuse me. But if we look at the midpoints, if we go up here to midpoints, and I've set up the midpoints to just show conjunctions and oppositions, there's Venus conjunct the Uranus-Pluto midpoint with a 1-minute orb. Almost exact, and this is why I think he was born around 9 a.m. If we use the chart adjust feature, I'm in the Series 1.3 software, I can click on it, go forward an hour, now it's a 9-minute orb, go forward another hour, 18-minute orb, 3 hours forward, half a degree orb. So we expect it within about a half a degree orb. So getting out to 3 to 4 hours, the orb is getting weaker and weaker. So now I'm clicking back. I'm back to 9 a.m. with the 1-minute orb. Go an hour earlier. It has a 7-minute orb. 2 hours earlier. 16-minute orb. 3 hours earlier. 24-minute orb. 4 hours earlier. Over half a degree. So I'm going to cancel out of this. That was the time adjust, showing that within 3 to 4 hours, that midpoint is within a half a degree orb. And for him to be so extreme, we expect that it was nearly exact, which would be around 9 a.m. Okay, so Venus is conjunct Uranus-Pluto midpoint in the 11th harmonic chart. This would normally be considered to be extremely trivial. Midpoint structures are trivial, or not very important. 11th harmonic, extremely unimportant. a midpoint structure in the 11th harmonic chart. Give me a break. This is clearly not important, according to most forms of astrology. However, this in vibrational astrology, it's considered to be extremely important because the emphasis in vibrational astrology is on vibrations. This is the chart of the 11 vibration of impatience, of being hungry, being restless, on the go, Venus at the symmetry point, right directly between Uranus and Pluto, indicating high excitability, high impatience. He hears music, he wants to dance, he sees a pretty girl, he's very, very excitable. So he's like electrified. Venus and Uranus, Pluto. Okay, so that's the 11th harmonic. Let's look at the 121st harmonic. I've already pulled these charts up. And now we see Venus, Uranus, and Pluto are conjunct. Within 10-degree orb, we allow a 16-degree orb in harmonic charts. You have to remember that in a harmonic chart, the orb is blown up. In this case, it's blown up 121 times. So an orb of 1 degree becomes 121 degrees. So these may sound like big orbs, but they're not, based on vibrational astrology theory. So he's got the Venus, Uranus, Pluto. How is it that Venus, Uranus, Pluto are 121st harmonic and in a midpoint structure in the 11th harmonic? Let me show you what's going on. I'll go back to the 11th harmonic. This Venus to Uranus angle is an 11th harmonic aspect. This is what it means to multiply, in this case 11 times 11, means we have an 11th harmonic aspect in the 11th harmonic chart. 1/11th of a circle is about 32 degrees. The angle from Uranus to Venus, or it's actually, 33 degrees. The angle from Uranus to Venus is about 66 degrees. And the angle from Venus to Pluto is 66 degrees. It's 2/11ths. So in other words, let me slow down and explain this more clearly. The distance of Venus to Uranus in this chart, called the 11th harmonic chart, is 2/11ths of a circle. The distance of Venus to Pluto is also 2/11ths of a circle. And then you take the denominator of the aspect, you multiply by the harmonic. 11 times 11 means they're conjunct. They're conjunct in the 121st harmonic. This is an incredibly powerful vibrational, what could I call it? Vibrational resonance. That Venus is vibrating in the 11 vibration between Uranus and Pluto. He's impatient. He's excitable. He hears that rock and roll beat. He's jumping. His circuits are firing. He's going crazy. And then this angle is 2/11ths. That angle itself is in the 11 of the 11, showing up as a conjunction, the triple conjunction. I'll click on the 121st harmonic. All together there, within the 10 degrees, creating this electrical excitability. It's a very unusual and powerful pattern. So this is vibrational astrology. Just went back to his natal chart to again show that all these harmonic charts do is show blow-ups, magnifications of vibrational patterns within the chart. And although it's not obvious, Venus, Uranus, and Pluto, Venus over here, Pluto over here, and Uranus over here, are in this very powerful 11-based resonance. So vibrational astrology is very unusual, very different way of analyzing astrology from the normal methods of astrology, and comes up with different ideas. So that's the basic concept of what's going on in his chart. Excuse me. If you're new to vibrational astrology, this may all sound a bit strange or hard to follow. It's actually fairly simple. It's just things being lined up in fractions of a circle. So, in my notes here, my PowerPoint presentation, I say this is extreme. To have the Venus conjunct Uranus-Pluto in the 11th, well, it's very excitable, but it's still not extremely unusual. But for it to also show up in the 121st harmonic, in the way I described. This is special, this is unusual, this is extreme, this drives you to extreme behavior, and because he was unable to express this energy very well, it turned dark, it turned negative. You have to remember, he doesn't know he has an astrology chart. He doesn't know he has these vibrations going on. All he knows is life is not working, and he starts going crazy. And it's festering and building up within him and explodes in this madness and turns evil. Now, I showed you the time adjust in the 11th harmonic, how I did it with the midpoints, and we can see how that midpoint changed. Stays within about 15 minutes for 2 hours. I really think he must have been born between 7 and 11 o'clock, and probably within a half hour of 9 o'clock. If we do the time adjust on the 121st harmonic, I can do it. But it happens to be a long-lasting pattern because Venus was moving very slow. Uranus and Pluto always move slowly, and so it was there during the entire time as well. Now, okay, what have we established so far? That there's this big Venus-Uranus-Pluto 11-based vibrational thing going on in this very unusual system of astrology that I call vibrational astrology. Well, if this 11-based thing is so strong, you would think it would show up at the time when he goes on this shooting spree and starts murdering people and goes ballistic. What we'll see is that Venus and Mars, at the time he goes on this rampage, which was, I put here 9 p.m., I checked, it's actually around 9:30 p.m., he starts opening fire, shooting people, and then shoots himself. At this time, Venus and Mars are in 11th harmonic with his Venus and Mars. And Venus is the critical planet, because it's the Venus at the Uranus-Pluto that's causing all this excitability. This is enough to be a trigger. So we can see this in a biwheel of the 11th harmonic charts, and we can also look at a biwheel of the 121st harmonic charts. Here's the, well, let me take it one step at a time. Here's the chart for 9:30 p.m. in Isla Vista, California, on May 23rd, 2014, when he goes on this shooting rampage. We see Venus at 24 Aries, Mars at 9 Libra. Doesn't seem to be anything major going on there. But when we look at the 11th harmonic chart, we see that Venus and Mars are 13 degrees apart. So they're in weak 11th harmonic aspect. We allow up to 16 degrees. They're in 11th harmonic. When we look at a biwheel, which I've selected, and I'll just click here, here's that Venus and Mars that I just showed you in the outer ring, which is the event, May 23rd, 13 degrees apart. Look at his Venus and Mars. Right in between. That means his Venus-Mars conjunction is in 11th harmonic to Venus and Mars. And Mars at 10 Capricorn, very close to his Venus at 7 Capricorn. 3-degree orbs in these harmonic charts is very small because we allow 16-degree orbs. And the Venus to his Mars, 2 degrees. And notice they're surrounding his Venus-Mars. They're at that exact moment, it's all within orb. It's really pretty amazing. So his Venus is getting fired up by Mars right at that moment with the 11-based resonance. So there's the Venus-Mars going crazy, getting very, very powerful, and he goes on this shooting spree. So this helps confirm the theory that we see that at the time of the transits that is going on. We can also select the 121st harmonic, compare those. Those move very, very quickly. But we can look at it. I didn't select the 121st of the shooting. I'll do that now. Go back to the natal chart of the event, and I just go here to harmonic charts, select 121. That's 121st harmonic, and then I select a biwheel, and I put his 121st harmonic in the inner ring, the shooting in the outer ring, click OK, because I like this wheel style set up to the default I like. And we can see if there are any resonances here. Now these things move extremely fast, but notice at the time of the shooting, the sun is directly opposite the sun. His sun in the 121st harmonic is 24 Scorpio. At the time of the transits, the sun is 26 Taurus, only 2 degrees. We allow 8 degrees for an opposition. I talk about orbs and harmonics in other videos. The sun and Venus opposite the sun right at that time. I think I noticed something else when I was looking at it. Was it Mercury? Mercury is opposite his moon Mars. He has a moon Mars 11th, and Mercury is opposite that. Mercury is conjunct his Mercury. He has in the 11th harmonic, in the 121st harmonic, Mercury at 21 Sag, Mars at 27 Gemini, Moon at 27 Gemini. Means that Mercury's almost out of orb. There's an 8-degree orb to the Moon Mars, but transiting Mercury is on his Mercury and opposite the Moon Mars. So if you think about it, it's all pretty amazing. The Sun is aspecting the Sun, Mercury's aspecting Mercury, and as well activating the Moon Mars. This gets a little bit advanced, and none of this is necessary to trigger the episode, the manic, insane, crazy, evil episode that occurred that night. The 11th harmonic pattern, I'll go back to that, the 11th harmonic bi-wheel, with the Venus-Mars activating his Venus-Mars, is sufficient. But at that exact moment, there were other things triggering as well. Okay, so this is vibrational astrology, showing how these forces and pressures work according to the system of astrology. It is a very unusual system of astrology, and most astrologers will find this very interesting or unusual, perhaps skeptical of it, I don't know, but that's, those are some of the main ideas. Now, let me go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so I've already talked about all this, the 11th harmonic, Venus-Mars aspecting the Venus-Mars. In the bi-wheel of the 121st, Neptune is on the Venus-Uranus-Pluto. I didn't notice that. Let me look at that. Let me go back to 121st harmonic, bi-wheel. Here's his Venus-Uranus-Pluto within 10 degrees, and Neptune's right there, 9 Virgo on Uranus. So this would be slower moving, so for several weeks, and I could do the time adjust and we can watch it. For a period of time, Neptune is on his Venus-Uranus-Pluto. So he's got a lot of activation. And on that day, at the time of the shooting, Saturn is directly opposite Venus within the same degree, 21 Virgo, 21 Pisces. That probably was a major trigger as well. Okay. So there's a lot of activations going on at the time of the event in the 11th and 121st harmonics. Okay, and we could play around the time adjust, but let me go on, and to see how long those things last. Now, I also want to mention the 7th harmonic. I think added to these problems. In the 7th harmonic, he has a Roger Elliott, if I go to his 7th harmonic chart, he has a strong 7th harmonic pattern, Venus, Neptune, Jupiter, Mercury, inclined him to his love of, you might say, science fiction, like video game type realities, with the Mercury, Neptune in 7th. It's prone to interest in cartoons or mystical ideas, and he did have some mystical ideas because women didn't like him. He decided he must be part of some superior race or something. Venus trine Jupiter. So he's got all these sextiles and trines going on. And so this also, he helped him split away, become non-social, and develop his fantasy world, which he took too realistically. And all the movies and things he's reading, inspiring that way of thinking. You see this often, 7th harmonic, with people who develop these abstract philosophies and they become negative. It happened with Adolf Hitler. if you pull up the Seventh Harmonic chart of Adolf Hitler, well, let's do that very fast. I can just use these hotkeys to bring things up fast. There's Adolf Hitler, and you can do this stuff very quickly when you get used to it. And there's the Seventh Harmonic chart. Hitler has a Venus, Mars, Uranus in Seventh Harmonic, opposite a Moon, Jupiter. And if we pull up the chart for the time he goes to war, he starts invading other countries in World War II, Neptune and Pluto are right on the Moon, Jupiter. I could pull this up and show it to you in another video. I won't show it to you now. But it's amazing. And I did a search on the internet and I found this website which gave a timeline. And then I pulled up a bi-wheel, just like I did of the 11th Harmonic chart for Roger Elliott and the time he did the shooting spree. I did the 7th Harmonic chart for the times, for around the World War II, and then I used the time adjust, and you can see Neptune and Pluto move right over that Moon, Jupiter. I can show you that in a different video if you're interested. But just another example of how people develop these abstract ideas. Usually it's positive. Usually it's wonderful. Symbolism, mathematics, algebra, discipline, focus. It leads to exceptional talent. But anything can turn negative, and it can. You'll see it in the attacks, the terrorist attacks with strong religious convictions based on some abstract ancient idea. And people get all twisted and they start killing people because it's religious. I mean, it's insane. And you'll see it. I can show you the 9/11 chart. If we call up the September 11 attacks, I'm just using these hotkeys to pull this up very quickly. So this is when, on September 11, 2001, at 8:46:30 is the almost precise time that the planes crash into the Twin Towers. I think that was the first one. And if I go to the 7th Harmonic chart, you see there's a Sun, Mars, Uranus, which is violent, potentially violent. The explosion, Mercury is opposite it. It's right on the ascendant, descendant at the time the plane hits the building. Anyway, I can give many examples. But anyway, getting back to Roger Elliott, I do think his 7th Harmonic all fed into it. It's like the perfect bad chemistry to make this happen. His 7th Harmonic is going into fantasy land and thinking it's real with all of his internal ideas and Neptune involved in that pattern. And the 11th Harmonic is completely frustrated, and you can see the whole pattern developing and exploding and having the disastrous, tragic effects from it. Now, another thing we can do to test our ideas is to run through our database in the Sirius software everybody that has Venus, Uranus, and Pluto in 11th Harmonic, or 121st Harmonic, or Venus conjunct or opposition Uranus, Pluto in the 11th Harmonic chart, and see if it's true. So this is the evidence-based approach. You don't just see one or two examples that you cherry pick and so on. That's a good place to start. But you see if it works consistently. It should show up at the time of the shooting. It does. Will it show up? What is the behavior of the people who have this? So I ran it through the database, and these are the results. You can do this in the Sirius software. And here are the people with the scores. I gave points for having Venus, Uranus, and Pluto conjunct in the 11th Harmonic and the 121st Harmonic. And this person, Pat Docker, scores highest with 93 points. And Pierre Cardin, I guess you pronounce it, clothing designer. And Alvin Ailey, a choreographer. Robert Duvall, very famous actor, shows up. And so on. Here we see Gene Houston, a person into self-development, human potential movement, it's sometimes called, psychologist. Aretha Franklin, well, there's a real rocker, intense rock and roll. She scores very high in this Venus, Uranus, Pluto. So what are we expecting? We're expecting Aretha Franklin type people, dynamic, full of spontaneity, electricity, and it kind of fits when we look at it. Alvin Ailey's a dancer. Anybody in dance and music would make sense. Here's another dancer. And Alvin Ailey is very creative, very unusual, always coming up with new things. And some of the others, maybe not so obvious. So then what I did, I ran it again. I added in the midpoints, got very, very similar results. And then I went and did some research. Who are these people? So this is qualitative research. This is how it's done in academia. This is the proper way to test your ideas, or one of the proper ways is to see if the ideas actually work. So who is this Pat Docker who scores very high? And I looked at the chart. Let's say it's a female, her chart. And I found information. I just Googled her name. And I looked at what it was. She has an extremely strong 11th harmonic pattern of Venus, Uranus, and Pluto. If we pull up her 11th harmonic chart, we'll see Venus, Uranus, and Pluto were within a few degrees in the 11th harmonic chart. She was a 25-year-old nurse, went out to a dance club. Okay, so going out to a dance club is things we expect people with 11th harmonic to do. 11th harmonic will do. In fact, Roger Elliott was going to clubs a lot and getting drunk and stuff. She was raped and strangled. The murderer, I got some typos here. Murderer was not found, but believed to have also murdered 2 other ladies. So we don't know much about her, but the circumstances fit. She's excitable, she's lively, she goes out. Excuse me. She gets lured in by this madman. This is a negative tendency of the 11th harmonic. The restlessness, the excitability, wanting that good time, going for it. So it fits. We don't know a lot about the situation, and we don't know really anything about her, but it reasonably fits the idea. Next person, wasn't able to get any information about her in Savage. Albert Leogier has the same exact pattern as Roger Elliott, Venus conjunct Uranus-Pluto in the 11th, and the Venus Uranus-Pluto in the 121st. French politician, we have almost no information about him. So politician doesn't sound like what we would expect, but we also don't know anything about this guy. So this is the kind of research. Pierre Cardin, he's a fashion designer. That doesn't sound particularly like Venus, Uranus, Pluto, but reading about him in Wikipedia, it says supported I think this supposed to be French. I'm typing very quickly. You're making notes. French press organization for music hall, circus, dance, and arts, holds music or dance festivals, invited the award-winning Chechen Children Dance Ensemble to dance in his musical show, Tristan and Isolde. He is involved with music and dance, but not as a performer. So, it's fitting reasonably well. Alvin Ailey fits very well. He's a choreographer with very unusual styles. And Robert Duvall, an actor, I said to myself, when I read that, I said, okay, it doesn't work. Robert Duvall is not a dancer. He's not a musician. He's an actor. Actors often dance and sing. He's got every opportunity to do it. As far as I know, he doesn't do it. I was ready to point this out as an example that doesn't fit, but I read about him, and I didn't know that he did play a country singer in one movie. The movie's called Tender Mercies, and he sings in it. 2 of his wives, he was married 4 times, which would not be unexpected for a person with this Venus, Uranus, Pluto, 11th harmonic type stuff. Curiously, 2 of his wives are dancers. His last wife, who's 41 years younger than him, also dances. And 2 of the others are professional dancers. And he produced, directed, and acted with her, his current wife, 4th wife, in Assassination Tango, with the majority of the filming in Buenos Aires. And listen to this, Robert Duvall is also known as a prolific Argentine tango dancer, having a tango studio in Argentina and in the United States. Tango, Latin American music, dance, oh my God, that's so Venus, Uranus, Pluto, 11th harmonic, fits perfectly. Here's an artist. Not much is known about him. he's an artist, so that doesn't particularly fit, but again, we don't know much about him. One of the people we do know about and seems to contradict the theory is Reginald Wingate. He was an administrator in Egypt and Sudan. He doesn't dance as far as we know. He doesn't play music as far as we know. He has a long-time marriage. So he doesn't seem to fit very well. The one thing is, I did see a picture of him with a dervish, which is interesting, mystical, spiritual, and religious people who do a lot of dancing typically. And you're probably not going to see many British people who are familiar with dervishes. And he spent a lot of time in Egypt and Sudan. We don't know, there's no mention of it, but who knows, perhaps the dance, the music, the liveliness, getting out of maybe being a government official was kind of stuffy, and it fit his love of life and excitement. Jean Houston also is not a dancer or a musician, but she travels a huge amount, and she traveled a lot as a child. I made a lot of notes about her. And she goes out where people are dancing and singing, and the liveliness of simpler cultures where they're not locked in their houses, split away from people, full of life and energy and music and dance. And she has other patterns in her chart. Anyway, I make a lot of notes to research it, and if we were doing this even more rigorously, we would go to greater extremes to determine if all the people meet our criteria. So I conclude from this, my conclusions are overall, it's a pretty good fit, much better than you ever get normally in astrology. Usually when you research things in astrology and you try to do it rigorously to see if every single person with a strong pattern fits, it just doesn't work out very well. Here, it worked pretty well from a more skeptical academic viewpoint. We would need to do more research and see what's going on with Reginald Wingate and some other people who didn't fit perfectly well. So that seems to, for the most part, confirm that our theory works. I'm at 37 minutes. I think I'm done. Did I have any more notes? The last thing I want to mention is two things. What would we tell Roger Elliott? We would tell him, express your excitability. Play percussion or electric guitar. Get it liberated. Make something of yourself. And also become more aware. He's attacking these women, basically. He's treating them like sexual objects. Women are generally more mature than that. They're not going to respond. He's reinforcing his negative situation. The hungrier he gets, the more ridiculous he gets. So be humble, be good at what you do, make yourself great, make it so that you have something to share. He was a psychopath, he was crazy, but he probably could have understood this and liberated his energy to start expressing it, say in drums or rock and roll guitar or something like that. And lastly, I just want to mention from a technical standpoint, when that Venus is at the Uranus-Pluto midpoint in the 11th harmonic chart, it means it's making an 11th harmonic aspect, one of these angles. Okay, and these are the actual angles that are in his chart, the number of degrees that separate the planets. For example, the Venus-Pluto angle in his chart is 71 degrees 24 minutes, which is within 1 minute of being 24 121sts, etc. Anyway, some technical information on exactly what these angular distances are, but it's actually not important. That's just in case you're curious about what's really going on, because we don't actually have to know any of this when we do vibrational astrology. We just going back to the charts, all we do is look at the harmonic chart and analyze the basic aspects and midpoints that are there. Okay, I am at 39 minutes. This is a long video. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.